And this is our 2024 Promaster Super High Roof.
In this video, we'll be installing the insulation. Started in the nose of the van, removing the headliner, reorganizing the wires to get them out of the way, and removing the light plugs. After getting the Thinsulate in, we'll just cut a hole in the Thinsulate to give access to the wires to plug in the lights. You might be asking yourself, why did I decide to install the insulation after I did the framing? Well, because we were going to do Havelock wool, and I thought it would be easier for the framing to hold the wool in place, but last minute decision, we switched to Thinsulate. It was a little more annoying to install at first, but once you figure out how to fit it in, it goes a lot faster after that. And I could have cut smaller sheets and just individually laid them in, but I like the idea of having full coverage, even over the metal ribs. For all the smaller nooks and crannies, I used this fish tape or this wire puller to pull it through. Some areas it worked really well, sometimes it didn't work at all, and I would just use a screwdriver to help push it through. Now, I don't think I needed to do these metal ribs because I'm going to cover up the entire area anyway, but you'll see a lot of people do this. And to me, it was just double the insulation and I had more than enough, so I figured it would just be extra warm around the bed. For the big panel, I just cut it to length, weaved it in along the framing, and then where the framing intersects the Thinsulate, I just cut a groove so I could flap it up underneath. This allowed for the long section to fold down along the horizontal metal rib. And before I install the wall panels, I'll go back through and cover up any gaps of the horizontal metal rib as well. And once I got into the groove of figuring out how to install the Thinsulate, I would dry fit it in place, fold one side up, apply the spray adhesive, fold it down, and then do the other side. From there, it was much of the same for every big section like this. I left some gaps, such as the window, as I'm still trying to figure out what to do with the window frames. Here's another area I didn't feel like I needed to stuff into the metal ribs like this because I'm going to be overlaying insulation anyway, but it's going to be double the insulation, so why not? And then you'll get into a groove of spraying and applying, and then you'll think, I should probably fill this before I cover up this hole. And here's another example of me filling the ribs. I don't think I needed to do this, just double the insulation because I'm overlaying the entire panel, but if you were going to cut sections and lay them between the metal ribs, it'd be more important to stuff the rib at that point. This whole purpose of overlaying is just to reduce the thermal conductivity of the metal and create a thermal break. I always go into these projects thinking that they're going to go pretty fast, and when I'm working alone, it goes much slower. Here, Ellen is helping me out, and so while I'm applying and waiting for the glue to dry, she's cutting the next section, and this really expedites the process. In these door panels, there are a lot of moving parts, so I'm being very careful about where I'm spraying and where I'm applying the Thinsulate. I'm moving the Thinsulate around and trying to weave it behind the parts. Then I'm opening and closing the door to make sure nothing's obstructing the door panels. There are a lot of tiny spaces in these pillars, and so a lot of cutting and a lot of stuffing, and I'm sure some of it's redundant, but I had a lot of Thinsulate left over, so I figured why not. When we did the framing, I intentionally left the roof strapping removable because I knew that when we installed the insulation, I wanted to put some amount of insulation in the small gaps that you can see between the strap and the metal rib. After wrestling with the headliner to get it back in, I struggled installing the strapping back over top of this. I tried many different ways and ultimately just decided to cut it down off the rib, place the wood, and then I will fix the headliner to the back side of the strap with some staples. When it came to permanently adhering the strapping to the metal rib, we used thread blocks on the bolt to the rib nut and also some construction adhesive on the spacers to the metal rib. We cut the roofing Thinsulate a little longer so it would fit in between the ribs, but also on the horizontal walls, it would come down to the framing and fill those voids. And before we install the wall panels on top of the framing, I'll go back through and install Thinsulate on any exposed metal to continue to reduce the thermal conductivity by creating a thermal break. We're leaving the front roof panel open to install max air and the back panel to install a AC unit. We'll come back through and install Thinsulate afterwards.